Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be making my mom's chili recipe. That was her recipe that I showed there at the beginning. I kind of tweak it a little bit in this video. I add a little bit more, double some things I don't double and wish that I would have, but I'll get to that a little bit later. I have to tweak it a little bit and add a little bit more because I want to have plenty to feed my family of 7 dinner and have leftovers for the fridge and freezer. So to start off with, you can see that I put my already cooked meat in here. You cook the meat and the onion together, and I had cooked this a couple of days prior just so that it would save a little bit of time when I got ready to actually make the chili. So I started out with my big 12-quart pot. You can use whatever size you have, but the 12-quart will hold all that I need and leave a little bit of extra room so that I'm not overflowing. I put my meat in and cranked that heat up to high to try to get it warming up a little bit before I add the other ingredients. You want to, anytime you have your heat on high on anything on the stove, you want to keep it stirred, keep it moving around to be sure that nothing sticks to the bottom. So first I'm going to add in the light red kidney beans, and I think I start off with 4 cans of these and add a few extra later. Next, I'm adding a couple of cans of original stewed tomatoes. And as far as brands go, I don't really pay that much attention to brands. I just get whatever's cheapest for the most part for a lot of things. This is the tomato sauce that I'm adding in here. And now to the tomato paste. I always struggle getting it out of the can, but you know, is what it is here. So here you can see I'm adding a little bit of water. I do use the water out of my sink sometimes, but anytime I have to use water in a recipe or a drink or anything, I prefer to use my Brita filtered pitcher. Just a preference that I have. It filters the water, makes it a little bit cleaner, probably a little bit safer, but I've never had any trouble using my well water out of the sink either. But I do this just to make sure that I'm getting all of the goodness out of those cans, and also to add a little bit of juice to my chili. I fill each can probably about halfway full, maybe a little more in some of them, just enough to swirl it around and get all of the sauces off of the sides. Gonna give all of that a good stir. Keep it moving around because I still have my heat turned up and I don't want anything to stick. Also, I want to stir it enough to incorporate that tomato paste because it still is in pasty form, so it wants to stick together. So I'm also, while I'm stirring, I'm checking to see if my ratios look good to me. The meat to bean ratio mostly is what I'm looking at here to make sure I don't have either way too much meat or way too much beans. Here I'm adding in a couple more cans of light red kidney beans just to thicken it up a little bit, I guess, just to add more into the juice. Give it another good stir. You always want to pay special attention to the sides and the bottom. Make sure that nothing is sticking. And if you do feel any resistance, like something is sticking, just give it a good little scrape. Just make sure that it all gets good and loosened up and doesn't stay stuck and burn. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my hot chili seasoning. The recipe calls for 1.5 packages of hot chili seasoning, but since I added in a few extra ingredients, I'm going to go ahead and put in a full 2 packages just to make sure that my chili is good and seasoned and not watered down at all. You can see I even put a tad bit of water in these packages just to make sure I get all of that seasoning out of there as much as I can and get it all into the pot. Adding the water in doesn't make the chili taste watered down at all. It just makes sure you get all of that good stuff out of the packages and into your pot. Give it another good stir, and then you want to make sure that none of that powdery seasoning is stuck on the side, because you want to make sure it gets all down in there and simmers together and really combines with everything so that you don't have just dry chili powder when you go to serve. Now while it's on high, the heat is turned up on high, you want to make sure that you keep it stirred really frequently. And then when it starts to get good and bubbly on top, I don't know if you could see those bubbles on top in this video, but it was starting to simmer and getting good and bubbly on the top. So I want to give it one more good stir, make sure that there's nothing sticking. I feel no resistance, and if I do feel any, I'm going to give it a good scrape, because there's nothing worse than the flavor of burnt bits in your chili. Believe me, I've tried it. It is not good. I'm going to turn that heat down on low, give it another good stir, paying really good attention to the sides and the bottom of the pot. And then you don't have to cover your pot if you don't want to. It needs to simmer for at least 30 minutes just to make sure everything gets good and incorporated together and the flavors combine really well. But it was going to be a couple hours before my husband got home from work, so I turned mine all the way down on low and covered my pot. But even if you do that, you still want to keep it stirred pretty frequently just to, like I said, make sure nothing sticks, because burnt chili does not smell or taste good. So here I'm serving it up in our bowls. No fancy matching bowls around here. We just use what works for our family. We use these not glass bowls for the little ones that sometimes their bowls end up in the floor. We have had a few broken bowls over the years. But you can see here my chili is very juicy. So this is where at the beginning of the video I was saying I wish I had added some extra beans and some extra meat in here. And this is why. The chili still tasted amazing. It didn't do anything to the flavor. But I just feel like I have a lot more juice than chili, so I wish I had added those things in. But like I said, the flavor was still amazing, and I might even, when I reheat the leftovers, I might add some more meat and beans in, just so that I don't have a ton of just like sauce left when we finish our chili. I would suggest if you're gonna follow the recipe and double it, I would go ahead and double everything because that's where I made the mistake here. I like to add some cheddar cheese on top. If we're just doing like chili boats, I would do Fritos and cheese and sour cream and all that goodness. But a little bit before my husband got home, I did go ahead and pop some hot dogs in the oven. So tonight we're having hot dogs and chili. So I just add some cheese on top to go with our hot dogs. This recipe is so simple and so good. I really recommend you try it out.